we set up all the app configuration pieces. So if we fire this 004 to do the same exact thing again, it actually creates an application configuration kind of resource inside the resource group. So it's going to create the app configuration, and app configuration is nothing more than a fancy key value store. So you can actually put in your own keys and values, and that is what you can use. So the application will connect to this configuration store to pull down the configuration items. But the only drawback is when you're doing this lab, the configuration app also comes with its own access keys. So you need to actually embed those access keys in your application to make it able to connect to that. So that's the only drawback with the cloud group, because it keeps changing every 4 hours. But if you have your own, then you can do that once, and then you can not bother about it. So I'll show you that piece too. Well, so this is created, and if you go back here, you'll see this application error because obviously the things were not set up correctly, right? So that's we'll fix that as we go, right? So this is what we'll do. It's actually expecting a message, and then the message is not configured inside the externalized configuration. So that's the problem. Okay, so let's move on to the backend piece of the puzzle. Now if you see, there's an image store API. This is where we need to see where the configurations are and adjust it a little bit. So if you go back to the source code, um, so if you come back here, so if you see here, right, in the resources folder, there are two files. There's application properties and application local properties. Application properties is actually used for testing. I mean, application local is used for testing, and it's actually pointing the local web app to the local API, and then it will actually create files in the local folder. But that's only for local testing. But this is the one which gets used. So if you see here, file upload endpoint is going to be this. So that's referencing the API. So that's a piece of the puzzle that is a little bit obscure, but you can kind of understand that piece. So now we are actually closing all of this and then going back to the other application, which is nothing but our API. And this is where we need some configuration because it has to talk to the storage account. And the same idea here. So again, very similar structures. Um, you will have a controller layer. If you go here, and also the same thing, hello controller, upload controller. And this upload controller is actually a REST API. And if you see here, the difference between that controller versus this controller is that it's a REST controller down here, right? Let me close this so it's easier to read. Right, and then there's upload file, post mapping, and then they have other file storage service, blob storage service, etc. So if you kind of go through all of that, this blob storage service, which is the one which actually writes the blob into the storage count, and it needs its own configuration. And the file storage service is the one which actually writes to the local storage of the application uh, container. That it's not really a container; it's actually a VM behind the scenes. So that it actually writes to the local disk, and then we'll investigate both of those as we go. And then the same thing with resources here. Same application local will allow you to test local, and you will see that it will use the seed temp, and you can also connect to the remote storage. So this is the only problem I was talking about. Every time we do this, you need the key will change, the connection string will change. So we need to make sure that the connection strings are correctly fixed before we build and deploy. So let me get the configuration. So the only difference here is it's a /temp because the Unix kind of a when you're deploying into Azure, the container is the VM is Linux, so it's put it on /temp, and the connection string has to change. So we'll go back to the storage account again. Let's see here. So we'll open this in a new tab, duplicate, and we'll pick up the storage account. Go back to the storage account, And then if you go back down a little bit, you will see the access keys, right? So click on the access keys, and then you need to show and copy that. Actually, let's not do that. Let's hide this. The connection string is what we'll use because it's easier to copy that entire connection string. Copied. So that's what we need to put here. So we just delete whatever is here, paste, save that. And then you don't have to change it in the application local, but let's change it. Why not? And let's save that too. So that is the important configuration that we needed. If you kind of notice, without that, if you use the old key, you will not be able to actually talk to the storage account. And then the important thing to remember is here, if you see this local, I'm using 1990 port, but the actual configuration on Azure doesn't use that. I mean, it reasons on the URL. So even though you have 1990, you really can't do colon 1990 just like how we were to do in local. So that's one. Let's see here. Okay, so that doesn't have any configuration built in. So let's kind of try to build it and deploy. A lot of steps, unfortunately, but hopefully it is kind of clear. Okay, so this one doesn't have any other configurations. You just need to deploy the app. We just will call the deploy app PS1, right? So same thing again, it queries Azure to get all the details and then pushes the application. Same thing, we're building it again, and we are going to, now if you notice, it's actually image store API, not the web app. And then it logs in with using the credentials that we had actually used in the AZ login. And then it displays a subscription and actually is pushing to the same app service plan. Okay, when that is deploying, let's kind of go back here, close this, open the web app, and understand this a little bit. So this hello controller here is kind of hard kind of coded to make sure that we use the Azure app configuration. And because we are using a app configuration, you will see that there is a feature manager getting involved. And then that's what we say that it's auto-wired app configuration refresh. So the idea is this, the externalized application configuration. You can actually change those elements inside the key value store. And if this is auto-wired like this, you can actually check this refresh inside your get mapping. And then you can say if refresh is not equal to null, then you refresh the configurations, and any value you are actually putting there, um, the new values, you can actually get the new value as we go. So what this is expecting is a key called beta, and then the value will be true or false as it is boolean. So what we have to do is we have to go back to our let's do one more time. Let's go back to our resource group, and then hopefully it will refresh. Okay, so you see the app config here. You need to open that up, and you'll see the access keys. Yeah, that I need to hard code and maybe I have to rebuild. But if you see the configuration explorer, that's where we have to set up all the keys. So you have to create a new one, a key value, and it can also come from a keyword. So if you remember, that was the beta, the value can be true, and you can apply. So that's needed. That's beta, right? And then if you go to feature manager, prefix equals config, we'll have to create a message here in a specific format. Only then it will recognize it. Let's see whether I have the Yeah, this is what you need to create. The application slash config slash application slash config. And this is important. So that is what is required, otherwise the system won't work. So you need to create slash application slash config, right? So create another key, slash application slash, the value can be Venki. So let's see here, this is also deployed. Let's go back. Let's see whether this works this time. Yeah, it won't work because I need to adjust the configuration key. Yeah, let me do that. Yeah, it's not going to work because the keys have changed, right? So the app configuration changed, so that's why the keys have changed. So we need to pull that down and then put it there. So going back here, app config, then we need to come back and look for access keys. Yeah, this is the only problem with the Cloud Guru. Then you can actually put the read-only keys. And we have to update that in the Spring configuration, otherwise it's not going to work. So let me close all this. Yeah, this is a little tricky because it doesn't come in application properties. You need to create a new file called bootstrap properties, and this is where you need to update the string. So this is what I'll get, connection string again from here, connection string, copy that, and we need to come back here and put it. So it's a little bit clunky, but nothing much we can do. I need to paste that. And then, so what's happening here is we are setting up the connection string, and then we are telling it that whenever this key called Sentinel is changed, you need to make sure that you refresh this and allow the clients to get the new values, right? And also, this is a feature flag called like beta. That's what we have set it up, and then we are saying we enable the feature flags. So I think I made a mistake, as you can tell. So let's go back to the app config configuration manager. Um, so this is actually not a key. So we need to get rid of this. Need to delete that. Yeah. And then we need to create a new one, and we call it Sentinel. I don't know why. I just got it from Microsoft documentation. So Sentinel. It can be any value. It doesn't matter. So that's Sentinel, and this is where we have to get the beta.